The next core condition is congruence or genuineness, and it basically relates to the idea of what's going on inside of you being what you show to the client in front of you. You're not role playing, and ideally you're not holding loads of stuff back. You are being a real human being with the person in front of you. In the last couple of videos on unconditional positive regard, I acknowledge that therapists have the capacity to judge. Ideally, you won't be making any judgments and you're able to just completely accept them. But I think if you are going to judge, which I think everyone is able to do sometimes, then it's really important to spot that so that you can put it to one side and prevent it from spilling out into the room. The ideal, though, of course, is that you don't judge at all, because making some kind of judgment that you need to put to one side is going to have an impact on how genuinely congruent you can be with a person. If you're making judgments all over the place, there's a severe limit on how congruent and how open you can be about your own process and your own feelings, because there are certain feelings, if you're making judgments, that you really shouldn't be expressing. And I think this feeds into the idea that being a person-centered therapist isn't role play. It's not a bunch of skills that you can enact at certain times. I think the most effective person-centered therapists really do believe in this stuff, and they can be truly extremely congruent with the person in front of them. Sometimes people can feel as though, person-centered isn't very good. And it becomes a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you think it's a load of rubbish, well, if you have those beliefs, then that's certainly something that you shouldn't really be expressing with the person in front of you if you are offering them person-centered therapy at that time. And as a result of those feelings, it becomes more like role play than a genuine human relationship, because you're holding so much back about your own feelings on the whole process that you're going through. Whereas if you really do believe in it on a deep level and you really buy into it, then you are much more likely to be very effective at offering it. Probably worth saying as well that congruence looks different with different people. It looks different with different therapists. My congruence, my genuine expression of how I'm feeling at that moment, is going to be totally different to maybe yours with the same client talking about the same thing. There's no formula by which you can be congruent. It's kind of the opposite of having a formula or having a script. It's being able to spot your own feelings in the moment and acknowledge them and express them if you feel it's helpful or appropriate, but certainly acknowledging them and being real with yourself and being real with the client. And in order to do this, I think you need to have a certain trust in yourself, in your feelings, your impulses, your intuitions, in order to express them and be them in the moment and be open about what's going on inside yourself and what process you're in your own mind. When I started training as a therapist, I felt as though I had to have really fully formed ideas about what was going on for the client before I expressed something. And I'm a lot more open now about my own uncertainty. I can express something, or I can really show that I'm struggling to find the words to describe how I'm experiencing something, or even how I'm feeling in response to what they're saying. And I think that can be quite a powerful thing, because it humanizes you. It shows that you have half-baked thoughts and feelings that you don't fully understand as well. And you're really, really trying hard to find the words to match what you're experiencing, because it's really important to do that, because the person in front of you is really important. And I think there's a certain glossiness to it. If I was to only express certain things when they're really fully formed and I'm given a really detailed, beautiful, glossy overview or explanation, then I don't know, it kind of gives the wrong impression. I think it gives the impression that I am fully formed and I have all these fixed ideas, when actually I find that I'm most impactful and most effective when I'm showing my process and my uncertainty with them. I think this ability to do that is possibly related to the fact that I have a certain confidence and a certain faith, you might call it, in the process of therapy itself, in the process of offering the core conditions to a person. And maybe when I was training, it was hard to have that trust in the process, because I'd not really been through it that many times as a therapist, and so I wasn't that comfortable showing my uncertainty, because I perhaps had too much of it. And if I'd shown all the uncertainty that I had, it might have undermined the client's confidence that I knew what I was doing. Maybe because I didn't know what I was doing, because I was just starting out. But now, I've got confidence in the process. I've got confidence in it working. And so I can share I can share my uncertainty a bit more, and I think that can be a good thing. That's congruent. And it's a funny one to think about how, because I was so uncertain in the process, I wasn't able to express uncertainty in the relationship and what I was hearing. I think as a student, it's difficult to know how to get to that point. I think it's just experience that does it. I'm conscious that me saying how really believing it is what makes you a better therapist. If you don't really believe in it, then there's a limit on how congruent you can be, and there's a limit on how well you can offer the core conditions as a result. I'm conscious that this has a potential to become a bit cultish, almost like you really need to believe in this, you need to buy into it fully, and then you can do it. If you believe you can achieve, it's real if you believe it to be. So I'd keep an eye on that. And I think there is truth to the idea. I think you do need to really believe in what you're doing in order to come across as really genuine to the person in front of you. I've met people who have done person-centered courses and don't believe in it, and their experience can reaffirm what they believe, because, well, if they don't believe in it, they're not really buying into it. The fact that they're holding stuff back, the fact that they're not really into what they're doing, I think on some level is likely to come across to the client. It's likely to, on some level, come across that they're not really there. They're not really present. And like I say, when you're first starting out, you might feel as though you're not fully present and you are worrying about what to do and you're inside your own head. And maybe there is a limit on how congruent you can be when you're just starting out, because you're probably focused on your own stuff and what to do and if this is going to work. And I think that's completely natural. It's completely inevitable anyway, as far as I see it, that you're going to focus more on your own process and your own stuff and to say the right thing earlier on when you've had less experience going through it. It seems inevitable that you're going to be able to trust the process more as you've had more experience going through that process. And as you build up more experience, you grow in confidence in the process and in yourself and in your own kind of intuitions in the moment, and you can kind of stop monitoring yourself so vigilantly and focus on the person in front of you more. I don't know how you can do that fully right from the beginning. Like for me anyway, and I think for a lot of students that I've worked with, it's something that's come with experience. Your congruence grows as you get more experienced, as you get more just comfortable in the process, and you can just trust yourself in the moment more. I mean, for example, my first ever client, I was really anxious because this is a big deal. I really want to get it right, and I was possibly more anxious than the client. If I'd been truly congruent in the moment, I'd have just said that. I'd have just said, "Oh, I'm really anxious. You're my first ever client. I've done all right with this in skills practice, but I hope I don't mess it up. I hope I do all right for you." You know, if I'd expressed that wouldn't have been helpful. And so there's all this uncertainty in my head, and I suppose anxiety in my head that I'm having to put to one side. And it's only as I got more experience that I had less anxiety and less feelings about what I was doing to put to one side. I could be more with them in the moment. And eventually, I think for a period as well after that, I was thinking of the right thing to say quite often. I'm going to summarise what you're saying now. I'm going to make sure I express this right. And I was very focused on doing the right thing. And I had a really big moment about 6 months into my first placement, because I had a few people come for a session or two and then not come back. It didn't happen that often, but it happened often enough for me to really think about it. And I was confused because I was like, well, I'm empathising at the right times, expressing my empathy, and I'm summarising at the end, and I'm doing minimal encourages, and I'm doing all these other things that in my head I was told I should be doing. And I think there's a big moment where I just thought, I'm just going to just do whatever comes naturally in the moment. I'm not going to kind of have a fixed idea of what I should do. I'm just going to focus on the person and just say whatever comes up and what feels right. And trust that what feels right in the moment is good, is right, is correct. And I mean, eventually I did away with correct and right and good in the abstract. There's just real, there's what's really going on inside of me. And well, that's it. That's the whole thing. Nowadays, I don't really have a what the right thing to do is or what the right thing to say is. Like, I don't have a script or a formula even in my head. I think the right thing to do and the right thing to say is based entirely on the specific context and the specific moment that I'm having with the client. And that's basically it, I think. And the only way to judge what the right thing to say is in any specific moment is to listen to myself and be open about how I'm experiencing things. And that's, I guess, what congruence is.